What has gone wrong for Labour?
Well, I mean, look at it this way. Labour's lost the last 4 general elections. It's been out of power since 2010. It's had a pretty catastrophic election defeat 9 weeks ago under Jeremy Corbyn. It's lost huge amounts of its heartland seats in what is now termed the Red Wall area, basically the area from North Wales all the way across to kind of Grimsby and then up to, it's not really a wall very much, it's a bit of a strange shape, but basically the north of England and the bits of the East Midlands, bits of the West Midlands. So Labour's lost huge amounts of ex-mining seats, for example. So Dennis Skinner, who you may remember Enoch Powell's famous remark that all political careers end in failure. Well, poor old Dennis Skinner at 87 was booted out as the MP for Bolsover, which he served since 1970.
I thought he actually retired.
No, he lost. He lost.
Dear, that must have been such a shock to him.
Can you imagine? That's the scale of Labour's defeat in December, that people like Dennis Skinner actually lost their seats.
I mean, he's
mining areas.
Quite a nice old bloke. I've met him on a couple of times, and I mean,
absolutely lovely man.
He used to just go and sit in there.
Very principled.
Yeah, and I remember saying to him once, "It's not doing much good, is it?" And he says, "That's my job, and I'm doing it. I'm sitting in there. All the others go and do other stuff. I just sit in there and listen."
Is he going to be a lord then? Is he a lord now?
No.
No, I doubt it. But I mean, it's just indicative. I mean, he symbolises what happened in December, which is all these rock-solid Labour areas, many of them in mining seats. This is the thing that people don't pick up on. Places like Lee, Bolsover, Bassetlaw, parts of Sheffield, Rother Valley and Rotherham. These are the areas that the epicentre of the miners' strike. They voted Tory. They now have Tory MPs, for God's sake. I mean, that's the scale of Labour's collapse in December. It's a catastrophic defeat in so many ways. And as I say, this is the 4th election defeat on the trot in the last decade. And the pressure is on to make sure that there isn't a 5th election defeat already being written. And I have to say, this Labour leadership contest is not going well.
It's not, is it? I mean, if they're
the
best, who would you think would make a positive leader out of the? Is it 3 that are left now?
3. I mean, to be honest, I mean, I don't have a dog in the fight. I just think all of them are in the wrong place on policy. All of them are in the wrong place in terms of playing to the gallery, in terms of Labour activists, and not speaking to the country. And really, Tony Blair's got his critics, and some of those critics are justified in the criticisms of Blair. But Blair today has made this intervention, this speech on the 120th anniversary of the Labour Party, the founding of the Labour Party, where he's pointed out that apart from himself and Harold Wilson, there are no Labour leaders that have won elections that were born less than 120 years ago. I mean, that's a staggering kind of thing to contend with.
And why?
In its 120-year history, Labour's only governed for about 30 years.
Why?
The rest of the time, it's been in opposition.
Why do people like Rebecca Long-Bailey think she has a chance of winning? And saying the policies were what people wanted. Now, a lot of young people, first-time voters, it's you become socialist before you actually become anything else, because you suddenly think, oh yeah, well this would be a great way of living, and everybody's going to be fairly treated and everything else. But what happens actually when the old guys get into Parliament in socialism, a semi-dictatorship ensues. But that didn't happen under Blair, did it? It actually became.
Well, he wasn't a socialist, was he?
Well, I mean, the Labour Party's got a strange history. The Labour Party is an agglomeration of all kinds of different left of centre opinions. So there are people that are staunch socialists. There are people who are democratic socialists, perhaps not quite as left wing. There are social democrats who are people who are, again, people prepared to work with a market economy to kind of humanise it. And there are people that are social liberals as well. And the Labour Party has always been very good at being a broad church. And in our system, we've got 2 main parties, and they're not, when you actually put a microscope on either the Labour Party or the Tory Party, what you find are people who've got, big differences of opinion, but can agree on enough of a shared platform to be able to govern the country. And that's how British politics works. And what's happened with the Labour Party is the blend is wrong. Jeremy Corbyn is a principled, old-fashioned, campaigning, socialist Labour backbencher. And, he's been made leader of the party, which has just been a disaster for him. It's been a disaster for the Labour Party, clearly. It's the equivalent of sort of saying, look, I'm going to put my my England football team forward, and I'm going to put Frank Bruno as centre forward. I mean, it's just wrong sport, wrong person, wrong role, and that's the story of Jeremy Corbyn, really. And what's happened is that blend has got to kind of recalibrate, because you've got to meet the electorate where they are.
So who?
And they ain't where the Labour Party is.
Who is going to?
The Labour Party is not where the electorate is.
Who is going to make a good leader that unites socialism in all its different forms? Who do you think would be a good leader?
In the age we're in, it is very, very hard to see anybody that galvanises and pulls together these various strands in an effective way. A lot of people are looking at Keir Starmer, who is ahead in terms of the nominations that he's received from local Labour parties across the country. Keir Starmer is, a very decent man. He's a
very nice man,
very nice man, human rights lawyer, and all the rest. He's not been in politics very long, and I would suspect his political skills are perhaps not what they could be. But there's a lot of people on the moderate side of the Labour Party looking at him and thinking he's our last best chance. And the trouble with Keir Starmer is not necessarily the continuity Corbyn candidate, but he's signed up to basically all of John McDonnell's mass nationalisation of the economy. So he's effectively the continuity McDonnell candidate, which may be even worse than the continuity Corbyn candidate. So Labour's challenge is to sort of speak to its members and say, look, guys, we ain't cutting it with the British public, and unless we do, we're going to be impotent forever, and the Labour Party may in fact even disintegrate. So we've got to engage with the public where they are. We've got to come up with a compelling vision of how we would govern the country and the policies that back that up. Now it requires real courage, and it requires the next Labour leader to take on, frankly, some of the people that have joined the Labour Party in the Corbyn era, who are often well-meaning, but frankly just detached from reality. And I think a lot of people are looking to Keir Starmer to be that person, and I'm afraid I'm just not convinced that he is.
He lost so badly. It needed to be destroyed and rebuilt again, the Labour Party.
But hang on, Keir Starmer also does look like a startled rabbit. Yeah. It's just the look on his face. Lisa Nandy, has she put her foot in it when she said she wasn't a big royal fan. That doesn't go down well with me, anyway. And she also looks like she's a bit too young. Rebecca Long-Bailey, well, she just looks like a school teacher. And I've said this all before, it is important to have the right personality, the right look to command, isn't it?
It is. I mean, you can make all kinds of arguments to say these things shouldn't matter, but frankly, these things do matter. Yeah. And the public make a judgment very, very quickly. The people, for example, made a judgment about Ed Miliband immediately. Why? This is a man who will fall out with his own brother over a job. Then what kind of a guy is he? And that kind of perception dogged him for 5 years as Labour leader. So it does matter, the sense of character and who you are and where you're coming from. That is absolutely
and what you look like as well. What you look like.
Absolutely, it does matter. William Hague and Neil Kinnock would agree that, frankly, being a bald man leading a political party...
Hey, Kevin. Hang on, Kevin. Hang on, Kevin.
No, he's right. A bald man's never won against a man with hair. Hang that is correct.
James, on radio, these things obviously don't matter. But in the world of television politics, some of these things...
Right, okay. Listen,
two of you.
Hang on. I do a Friday night TV show called Break the News between 7 and 8, Kevin, and I want you to come on the panel one Friday evening. I'll show you how bald men work.
But you see, you get a different reaction when people can see you on the telly because they can see you're bald. It's a bit like the Nixon-Kennedy debates of the
absolutely.
60s.
You can make a very good case and say, look, these things shouldn't matter, and of course they shouldn't.
Okay,
but the fact is they do.
Let's see who in that case could bring Labour back from the brink like this. Who do you think?
Well, there's only the three of them now that are in the race. So it's either Lisa Nandy, Keir Starmer or Rebecca Long-Bailey.
Yeah, but none of those, in my view, and probably yours too, Kevin, are ever going to win an election.
I don't think they are. And I think, frankly, the challenge of the next Labour leader is to lose better in 2024. I mean, that's as much as can be hoped for, frankly. I mean, the idea that any of these three, given the hand of cards they've got, and given the huge task in terms of the modernisation of the Labour Party, which is what Blair's talking about today, the idea that you're going to win an election in 2024 is frankly for the birds. I mean, as I say, we're losing ex-mining areas. This is the absolute core heartlands of the Labour Party. That has got to be addressed. That has got to be fixed. That has got to be priority number one. Rebuilding and regrouting that red wall has got to be absolute top priority. And I just don't sense, frankly, any of these three candidates are focused on the issues at hand. They've drifted off into kind of identity politics, box ticking and pleasing people, which is what Blair, again, to be fair to him, was warning about today.
So what sort of
rather than talking to the country.
What sort of person do they need to lead them? Take it all these three are no good. What in future do they need?
I think we need somebody that sort of says, guys, we've tried, Model A under Jeremy Corbyn. It just doesn't work. It is not going to build a big enough electoral coalition for us to cross the line. If we don't win, we don't enter government, we can't do anything. And I think the Labour Party's got to get back to that point, which it frankly did get to after the 1992 general election defeat, which is basically where the modernisation under Blair began, even before Blair. That Labour had lost 4 elections on the trot through the 1980s. And there was a point where people sort of said, look, for God's sake, we can't lose another election, so let's just do whatever we need to do to win power, to enter government, and then we can have some of these debates afterwards. But we can't do anything else in opposition, and it is soul-destroying when you're in your 40s and your 50s and you see your best years disappearing and thinking, I can't make any difference to the people I represent. And the difficulty for Labour is there aren't enough people, frankly, at that point yet in terms of thinking we've got to do whatever it takes to win an election. And I think that's the difficulty if Keir Starmer wins, taking on some of the people on the left to say, look, guys, this leads nowhere. This kind of politics of protest and opposition and kind of, grandiose kind of programs of nationalising half the economy and all the rest of it, the public will not vote for it. And if they don't vote for it, we're going to stay in opposition forever. And if that happens, we can't change anything. And in a sense, there's a generational tilt that's got to take place here, where the idealism is tempered by the reality of when you get in your 30s and your 40s. That's kind of the bind I think the Labour Party is in at the moment, where this may be a 10-year project to get it in the right place. So then the job of the next Labour leader is, as I say, and I don't mean this flippantly, is to lose better in 2024, because I think, frankly, that's as much as we can hope for.
Kevin, good to talk to you. Don't forget, we'll get in touch with you about Friday night's Break the News on TV. Thank you for that, Kevin Meagher, former Labour advisor.